Well, happy Sunday. This is PFG Live, the video podcast that reminds you that flat is where it's at. Let's see. We're saying hello to CJ Stevens, who just gave us a bit of weather from East Tennessee. He says it's 64 degrees and very sunny in East Tennessee and still some wind from last night's storms. Welcome aboard, Sir Carl Tauber in the People's Republic of Rhode Island. Says it's 60 degrees, Frankenstein, and sunny. Welcome, sir. My neighbor to the south. Who just got back? Tucker just screeched into home. He says it's 69 and cloudy with severe thunderstorm warnings out and about in the Buffalo, New York. Evils is with us from Ghent, Belgium, where it is completely normal and a ridiculous format. Welcome. Josh says audio check in southern Manitoba. Thank you, sir. His local METAR is Charlie X-Ray Mike Delta reporting. Winds are 160 at 06 knots. Temperature minus 07. Dew point minus 14. That's a little chilly. Dale is with us from Edmonton, Alberta, in which he is minus 9 degrees science and cloudy in northwest New Mexico. That used to be funny. Paul is with us from Dallas. He says it is 63 Fahrenheit, although the way you wrote it, Paul, it says minus 63 Fahrenheit, which is pretty cold. 63 Fahrenheit and sunny with windows open in the house. Welcome aboard. Chris O says it's 61 Fahrenheit and cloudy in L.A., which I'm assuming is not Louisiana. Welcome. Here in the Windham, New Hampshire, currently 64 degrees with winds out of the south at 13. We're supposed to get up to 66 degrees today. And at Manchester Airport, winds are 180 at 11, gusting 18, visibility 10 miles, sky broken at 1600, overcast 2300, temperature 18, dew point 13, altimeter 2995. Hi, everyone. Happy Sunday. So we had an interesting week. Lots of little tidbits to talk about, which we will do. Make no mistake about it. So DBX isn't here. I don't know if he's going to be here. Oh, Unix Carbide is here. Welcome aboard, sir. Did we get a weather report from Unix? What's going on in the Brooklyn, man? I got to know. So a couple of weeks ago, I don't know if I mentioned this. I don't think I did. We found some black and white negatives from my, not sure who it's from, but it's from my mom's family who lived in Manhattan Beach area of Brooklyn, and it was black and white photos from somewhere between 51 and 56. I think we located the time frame. And it was pretty cool. So we may isolate a couple of those pictures and publish them. But I have to talk to my uncle about it first to make sure nobody will be incarcerated. RJ's Workshop, welcome aboard. He says it's 37 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny with a slight breeze at 35 miles an hour, gusting to 58 in southeast Wyoming. Dude, your definition of slight breeze and my definition of slight breeze are a little different. Unix Carbide is checking in from Brooklyn. He says it's still walking in right now. It's 61 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy, and it's supposed to rain hard but dry eventually. Welcome aboard. And welcome to our discordant crew, which is changing and growing and shrinking variously. Josh, Unix Carbide, Dale, Rod 824, Carl Tauber, Paul Morley, Evils, Tucker, and Chris O in the Discord. Welcome. I get a really bizarro message from my buddy Mike. And if you know Mike, you would realize that this is not at all unusual. Mike's channel is Microwave One, and he does ham radio stuff and old radio stuff and tubes and Just he's a master at it. But he sends me he sends me this message this morning with a picture of two washers, and it was like, please address the correct way to use a washer or something like that. And I'm like, Mike, what the hell? I sent him a message back. I said, Mike, what the hell are you talking about? Well, he never got to respond. But I'm staring at his picture, and I think, Mike, I think I know what you're asking, and we're going to talk about it forthwith, post haste. The other things that happened in the shop this week is we got some stones made. Oh, so we were cleaned out of 4-inch stones, which is, of course, one of the more popular sizes. We're very close to finishing a batch, so we'll be back in stock shortly. Of that batch, there are 2 specials going out, one that has a lip and one that has a bevel. The gentleman who ordered the bevel has a special requirement, and we're trying to make a smaller included angle, a narrower bevel, and it looks like this is unofficial. This is just between us, okay? This is not for public use. It looks like we could do a 35-degree bevel on the 4-inch stones, and I'm waiting to get his thumbs up. You know who you are. I don't want to call you out. So please let me know, and we'll get to that. Evil says, nice to hear you cater to special needs customers. Absolutely. Although one can look at this group and sort of determine that we're all special needs customers. Happy to help if I can, and it looks like in this particular case I can. So, yeah, Evils was hanging out with me while I was in the shop. I was on Discord with my rig and my protractor, my Starrett protractor, trying to figure out if we could pull off this narrow bevel. So I think we're going to be okay. I could use some feedback from a YouTube person to tell me how the stream looks, because I did make a couple of little tweaks, and I just want to make sure that's looking good. So if anybody on YouTube can give me some feedback, I sure would appreciate it. So let's address Mike's question here, seeing as that's what we're here for, and then we'll get into the rest of the story here. So this is a washer, okay, and you'll notice it has a 3-letter code on it, UAB. Anybody know what that 3-letter code? Why there's a 3-letter code on my washer? Anybody know that? I'll give you a second to guess. Why is there a 3-letter code on my washer? It's UAB, and Evil says if that's all that's left in your wallet, you are broke. No, that's not it. So Jeff doesn't steal your washers? No, that's not it. Thank you, RJ. He says YouTube is looking good. CJ Stevens says it's a Hillman product. I don't think that's it. There it is. Paul got it. To help Home Depot personnel find the price. So yeah, Home Depot uses this a 3-letter code system on their hardware, and if you think about it, that's pretty cool, because you could have 26 times 26 times 26 codes, and that's a bunch of codes. Somebody could do the math on that for me. Oh, CJ Stevens says Hillman stamps those. Oh, for Lowe's and Home Depot. I did not know that. Thank you, CJ. See, that's why we come here, to learn from you y'alls. Okay? Thank you very much. So Mike sends me a picture of 2 washers. So CJ says the important thing. He says Hillman stamps those for Lowe's and Home Depot. So when you stamp one of these washers, okay, they end up with a little burr. You could feel it on the side where the back of the unit when it was getting stamped. So when you buy these washers, one side, I'm going to call it the smooth side, and then the other side has a burr on it. And you can just decide which you want. So if it's going to be exposed and you don't care about the surface of the thing that you're honking your bolt down on, you could put the smooth side out so it doesn't catch on anything. Okay, and if you care about the surface that you're bolting down, you could put the smooth side to it so it doesn't indent it or scratch it, and let the nut take the damage from the burr. Now, I know this is going to come as a shock to you, but I have taken washers and put them on the surface grinder to flatten them. It was for a work holding application, and it was a quick and dirty. But yeah, so Paul, you picked up the brain waves, or you can surface grind it. You can also pop these right on the Labzetti plate, right? That's why we have the Labzetti plate. And Robin has taught us about his magic sanding plate. You got the magic sanding plate in the shop. You walk up to it, you put the washer down with the burr down. You go zip, 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 and the burrs are gone. So you have a lot of choices. So I don't know if Mike intended to start all this trouble. Oh, Dale. See, Dale, that's pretty cool. Dale says, or you could put two together. And I guess if you put the burrs facing the burrs, they could fight it out. Right? Good idea. Anyway, that's the washer story. Hey, Mike, I hope we answered your question. And if we didn't answer your question, you could buy me sushi and we'll talk about it. So a little plug for Mike. It's Microwave One with a K, Mikro Wave Digit One. That's his channel. If you like oldie timey radios, check out Mike. He's pretty cool. So what else happened this week? So the Bevels problem was very interesting. I don't have any pictures to show you on the Bevels problem because I didn't take any. But you may recall about 150 years ago, I made the custom grinding vise to hold the stones specifically for beveling. Evil says, wasn't it Robin that pointed out that the rounded side has less loading capacity? Well, it is now. We could probably come up with several highly analytic reasons for using one side over the other, and I respect all of them. So, excellent. So a while back, I took a grinding vise, and I modified it to give it way more clearance on the fixed jaw side. And that was specifically so I can put a stone in a grinding vise and tip it up and grind the bevel. So there was a few things that happened when I did that. And, by the way, we named it Clarence. So if you go back in the videos, you'll find it somewhere. But I did that whole job on the grinder. It was 100% on the grinder. And people thought I was a lunatic because it was a lot of material. But actually, it was a very educational experience. And I learned how much grinding I could do before I want to go and dress the wheel. And then I had it doing automatic dressing. And it was a lot of fun. Hey, Stefan's here. Welcome aboard, sir. I need a weather report, Stefan. Location, weather report. You know how it's done. He says it's 1913 German time, and its temperature is dark. Thank you. That's more perfect than you could possibly know. So anyway, the angle that I ground off on that grinding vise was 40 degrees. So we were doing 40-degree bevels. Everything had clarence, and it was great. Well, of course, customer comes along, long-time customer, and he says, yeah, pretty please, I need it narrower. So I did some measurements on Clarence and on my setup, and it looks like we could do a 35-degree bevel. I don't expect treats like this all the time, okay? But for this customer, we'll get you your 35-degree bevel. Okay. So it's 6 degrees science in Germany with Stefan. I assume that's outside, not in the not in the shop, Stefan. It must be warmer. By the way, if you haven't watched Stefan's channel, which I highly recommend you do, he's got this great grinder where you sit in line with the wheel and you can see your grind. You can see your grind. What's the name of that machine, Stefan? Your grinder? I can't remember. The Surface Grinder of Death. Yes, that's the one. Bema, Bema. And Unix Carbide is suggesting that Stefan, when he said 6 degrees C, he was asking for a 6-degree bevel. No. How about no? We're going with no. Anyway, I really think that grinder is pretty cool, just because you could see stuff. Speaking of seeing stuff, we're going to talk about. Oh, there's a link. Thank you very much. Lever operated flat grinding machine. Let's see. I just want to make sure we hit everything before we switch gears here into teeny weeny parts. Dale says it's extra fun to run with the wheel guard off, I suspect. Please use your wheel guard. Please. And Stefan, please sit behind 3 inches of acrylic. Thank you. That would be great. So a friend of mine who is in Canada, our neighbors to the north, he's actually in Ontario. Calabogie, Ontario, if you must know. And his name is Tar, and Tar is awesome. Hi, Tar. And Tar is into 4-wheel drive RC rock climbing fun. And he had a problem, so he contacted me. But before I talk about that, Ugly Skull is with us, reporting at 2:14 a.m. Now that's dedication. It's 24 degrees science in the Philippines. Welcome, sir. Nice to see you. And Test Room 2003 is with us, and he says, good evening. Late at the party. You're never late to this party. 3 degrees science, 75% relative humidity. He says hi from Oostkapelle, Netherlands. Yeah, it's not ITAR. It's hi, Tar. I got to be careful. Now the video's flagged. What am I going to do? So he sends me this little blivet, which I'll show you a picture of. And it is the transaxle of one of these minuscule RC trucks. And let me see if I could zoom in on that for you. There it is. That's about 3 inches long. Okay. And when he sent it to me, if you're on video, that lug that's on the right that has a screw in it, that's actually after the repair, and that's the hole that we repaired. And on the left, the mirror image, it was the original one. He sent it to me with the screw in that one. But in one of those threaded holes was a broken screw. And it was one of these screws, which is metric 1.4 millimeter by 0.3 millimeter pitch, or M1.4 by 0.3. And a couple of weeks ago, we tried the first attempt, which was, let's see if we can drive that screw fragment out of that hole. And I even made a little carbide blade-like tool to try to jam the blade into the end of that screw and keep driving it forward. That didn't work. Tried to use the same special tool and drive it backward. That didn't work. We tried a bunch of things to try to get the fragment of that M1.4 out of that hole. Didn't happen. So the plan at that point was to bore out the hole, plug the hole with aluminum, re-drill it, retap it, and make life good. So I ended up going to McMaster Carr, as one does, and I ordered up this now famous tap, which is part of our thumbnail. So I got a couple of those taps, and you got to use a magnifying glass to make sure you actually got a tap. And that was the plan. And I just want to show you a couple of the photos of how that all started. So this is after we decided we have to drill it out. And this is the issue. I have a Bridgeport. Okay, I have what's called a Series 1 Bridgeport with the I forget the exact details, but it's a Bridgeport, pretty standard Bridgeport, 1991. So if you're not familiar, Bridgeport has an R8 spindle. So it takes these spindle collets, and it also, of course, can take chuck holders, all sorts of things. But this is a teeny weeny little part. So the first thing I did is I figured out that this part had some flats on it that we can depend on. And I was able to grab onto those flats in the Bridgeport. And it was giving us reasonable... welcome, Robin. Oh, Robin was talking about snap rings. See, he's not going to let you get away with it. So the first step was holding this little teeny weeny part and drilling out the stuck screw. And here you can see this is the setup where we finally get it going. But let's talk a little bit about getting to this point. So what I did is I got an optical center finder. What do you call it? Optical center finder. It goes into the chuck. It has an angled tube with an eyepiece, and it has a crosshairs in it. And you can look through it and look down and find your center point. Now, it's not trivial because you have to calibrate it. A centering microscope. Thank you. And this is not an expensive one. This is a pretty inexpensive one. And it has a little adjustment in one axis for the crosshairs. So you would engage your clutch on the Bridgeport, swing it one way, pick an artifact to put the crosshairs on, swing it 180 degrees, turn the little knob, which was swinging the lens in Y, and split the difference, double check it, and now you at least had an accurate Y-axis, and it's accurate at the point that the crosshair crosses it in the X-axis. Long story short, you have an optical centering microscope. So between grabbing it in the vise at a reasonably square angle, I did, by the way, ultimately have to use a piece of tape to give it a little bit of tilt because it wasn't perfect. And I just want to show you the setup here. Let's see if I can find here it is. So one of the ways to check it is to put a square block on top of the square jaw of the vise, which I know is square because I ground it. And then I put a 0.167 inch gauge pin down the throat of the transaxle. It was a nice fit, and I was able to get this thing aligned by eye. Mark 1 Mod 4 eyeball. Stefan says, I have one of those that I have stolen off the Moore jig grinder for several years. I need to make a shank for it. So the one I have it really is inexpensive, and it was made in Korea. It's called a Skoll, and it's okay. I kind of would like to get a really good one, but this is one of those cases where it had to be legally acquired. I get it. Stolen was not the right word. and it had nothing to do with ITAR. So once the thing is aligned so that the hole is straight up and down, then we could use the centering scope and get that going. So I was able to locate the hole, mill out the hole, and stuff a piece of. So here's a picture of milling out the hole, and I had to use some Sharpie just to make sure I was seeing what I was seeing. It was very hard. So that brings up another point, is that you have to be able to see what you're doing. So I have these this visor magnifier that we affectionately call, after my good friend who passed away, Norv. We call them Norvicals because Norv used these all the time in small electronics. And so I've got the magnifiers on my head. I've got my DeWalt work light sitting on the table just to see everything. And I had to mark surfaces with Sharpie, so when I come down and I touch it with the mill, I could see the concentric circles and make sure that I'm lined up. And I was. And then finally, after using a 1/16 of an inch end mill, carbide end mill, and clearing out the hole, I was worried that it was going to grab on some of the bits of the old screw. So now we have a piece of stainless steel in there. I was really concerned that there was going to be some yoinkage, but it was totally smooth. It was also incredibly boring because yours truly went down 10/1000ths and then cleared it, and then went down 10/1000ths more, and then cleared it, and then went. So it wasn't exactly a fast procedure. Now, on the Bridgeport, you could be, let's go back to the milling operation, right? You could be using the quill, or you could be using the knee. So how many of you would have used the quill? Raise your hand. And how many of you would have used the knee? Put a letter K. I don't know. So here's what I do. I lock the quill. Okay. I do not use the quill. So I use the knee for this because I get much smoother control. Yes. Stefan says, coming from Euro mills, I would tend toward the knee. So I was using the knee. Now the knee is very heavy, right? So even if there's a little play in the gibs, the knee is just sitting on its gear. And then when you move it up, there's no hysteresis, there's no jankiness. So even though we're working with this little teeny weeny part with this 1/16 of an inch end mill, we're going to drive the work with this 300-pound knee. It worked fantastically well. I have a DRO, and I literally touched off, went down 10/1000ths, came back up, cleared it. Yep. Yeah. Robin agrees. Quill with stop and knee. So when I got to the drilling part, I can't remember if I might have used the quill a little bit just to get the dot in for the center drill. But anyway, I nervously went through this thing and it went just fine. So the next part of the mission was, now I've got to fill this hole with aluminum. And if the first thing that popped into your head is, oh, you could just take your TIG welder and just TIG weld that hole, I assure you that my name is not Roy Crumrine. Okay. So Robin's saying quill feeding the cut, but using the knee for 10/1000ths increments. That's a good idea. I have used the quill in those kind of circumstances where I drop in a little drag on the lock for the quill, because otherwise I think it's a little sloppy. But yeah. Yeah, Evils, who is taking a course right now in welding, says, sure, around 20 amps should be enough to make the part disappear. Correct. and and Unix says Bondo. Um, well, honestly, depending on what you're doing, epoxy, Bondo, graphite filled epoxy, they're all possibilities. But of course, this thing is the transaxle for a truck, so we wanted it to be as close to original. So what I did is I used 4043 aluminum. I had 1/16 inch rod. Yeah, Robin says helicoil it. I would pay to watch you helicoil that hole. That would be a lot of fun. So I have 1/16 inch 4043 aluminum rod, and I have a 1/16 inch end mill that just bored that hole. So it was a sticky fit. So I said, I will go over to my Renzetti lapping plate, the Lapzetti plate, and I put the rod down on the plate, holding it in my DeWalt drill, and I, with my fingers acting as a little brake, and I just rotated the aluminum rod a few times, went back for a fit check, and eventually I got this very nice fit check. Might have even had a little taper on it, which was actually good, and it fit. And then the next thing we did is we put a drop of Loctite 609. Oh, we cleaned it first, of course. Loctite 609, and put it in there, and it went boop and stuck really nicely. I took my little whatever I had laying around, and I tapped the top of the rod a little bit, tappy, tappy, tap, and I went to lunch. And the Loctite 609 was able to do its job. So let's talk a little bit about Loctite. And there are other brands, but I've been using Loctite for so many years. Henkel bought Loctite, and it's still a thing. In our Discord server, in our reference library, I believe we have a wall chart for all of the Loctite compounds. You actually need it. Yeah, Stefan says Loctite could be so scary at how quickly it sets in certain materials. Yeah, I think some of the chemistries are such that it sets with lack of oxygen or something. It's a little weird, and some of them are also. Oh, interesting. Robin says, "Did you know that all of the primers reduce the ultimate strength of the Loctite?" I did not know that. Of course, ignorance is the best policy. We didn't use any of the primers here. We just cleaned the aluminum, freshly exposed aluminum, cleaned it with a solvent, let it dry, Loctite 609, and in. I first learned about Loctite 609 from Adam Booth. So approximately 150 years ago, Adam was doing one of his magnificent videos on a pump repair. And I believe it was a bronze bearing or a bushing. And you would, and I don't know if it's 609 or one of its relatives, but you would machine it to have about 2,000ths clearance, and then you'd put the Loctite on it, put the part in, and in Adam's video, you would rotate the part, and all of a sudden it goes dunk, and you can't rotate the part anymore. And you're done. So this was similar, but very teeny, and I did not rotate the part. I just tapped it in and left it. Art That Makes Art says 609 doesn't mess around. It holds good. Yes, it absolutely is fantastic. Stefan says only had to use the primer on red metals, brass, bronze. Yeah. So we do have the chart in the reference library. Yeah, read and follow the instructions, and it will not disappoint. So after we got this little rod, by the way, does anybody know why I chose alloy 4043? There's a trivia question for you. Why did I choose alloy 4043 for the fill? I cannot put one over on you guys. Dale said, because I had it. and Josh agreed, and Unix says to get to the other side. Let's see. A couple of other guys are typing here. Yeah, okay. Stefan has the most accurate answer, which is because you had a weld wire. Yes, this was a 4043 TIG welding wire in 1/16 inch. And I literally just had to like almost reach for it, and I had it. So yes, that's why I carefully chose 4043 as my alloy. I have no idea what alloy these little widgets are, but they're probably 6061. So it worked out pretty well. So let's see, what else can I show you? Oh yeah, let's talk about this for a second. Oh, thank you for the PDF there, Evils. It is not a casting, Robin. Believe it or not, it's a CNC machined aluminum part. And the center, there's a brass part, which I think is the gear cover. I didn't take it apart. It's these guys are just crazy. I mean, in a good way, in the best way possible. They're crazy. This is a machined transaxle with gears and differentials, and yeah, it's magnificent. Yep, that's exactly right, CJ. It's a differential housing. CJ says you just can't anodize it. Trust me, this won't be anodized. So the first thing we talked about is magnification, right? So you have to have some sort of magnification. You have to have some sort of illumination. I had my rechargeable DeWalt light. I had my visor magnifiers. The other thing I had was my roll-around mechanics chair. This is one of those very inexpensive, pretty low mechanics chair, and it put me just about the right height to get in on the vise for these teeny weeny operations. So you need a way to sit and get comfortable. This is almost like welding, right? Always be comfortable. You need a way to see, and you need a way to control the machine. So I was able to, at least for the drilling stuff, I was able to like use the quill. My left hand could reach over and grab the knee lever and move the knee, and I had the digital readout. If I turned my head 90 degrees, the digital readout was right there. Yeah, I think I saw you. I think I saw that you made something like that. Stefan says, for that purpose, I made a tiny observation microscope out of off-the-shelf parts. Excellent. The other thing you could do is you could take a USB camera and turn it into a microscope, or use one of the inexpensive microscopes that essentially do that. Yeah, please put it in the discussion channel. That'd be perfect. So these three things, the ability, the illumination, the magnification, and the ability to sit and be comfortable, started making the use of the Bridgeport on this little teeny weeny thing pretty comfortable. Yeah, so we got a link from Robin, but you'll have to chop off. Well, it looks like it was automatically chopped off. Data sheets from Henkel, Loctite. Can somebody grab that link and put it into reference library, please, when able, so that we have it? By the way, if you join our Discord, you have access to all the things we're talking about. We have a reference library channel and all sorts of good things. So we will grab that. So once the 609 cured, I took it over to what is now it's the TIG table, but we weren't TIGging. It's also the NSK table. So I took my new NSK grinder and took down the nubs of the aluminum to approximately flat with the surface, and got ready to file it. So I put on my best. Hang on, I'm not finding my. Oh, there it is. I filed it so well I couldn't even tell. That's the one I'm most proud of. You can't even tell that there was anything there. But I switched hats to my Ox Tools hat and got out a flat file with 2 safe sides, and I very carefully flat filed the top and bottom. Thank you, Evils. Appreciate it. So that was the end of that part of the process. So they were now filled, and now we had to go back to the Bridgeport and get the holes set up. So this is where we did the alignment. Yes, the PFG guy said approximately flat. Listen, the most important thing you can do as a craftsman is know when to be inaccurate. So there is such a thing as good enough. Sometimes the good enough is the diameter of an electron, but just know where good enough is. So we went back to the vise. We got lined up again, and we proceeded to use a center drill. I don't remember the number of the center drill. There's my little dingus. Oh, this is where I did use the quill stop, because I did not want. I actually measured that center drill, and the center drill, the little skinny part of the center drill, was bigger than my goal drill. So I just wanted the tip of it, and that's why I used the stop and the quill. So that was one place. By the way, Robin says everything is approximate. Nicely done, sir. Can we call you Heisenberg? Oh no, that was taken. Say my name. Then we drilled it. Now, this was a little bit of a panic because I needed here's my notes right here. All right. For an M1.4 screw, I needed a 1.1 millimeter drill for a 75% hole, tapped hole. And I had to run around a little bit and find the closest drill. I actually think I went over. I think it was 1.15 millimeter, but it worked great. So we drilled the hole, and it was time to tap it. So I bought these little taps. The little knurled brass tap driver that you see there, I made many moons ago when I had my Sherline mill. So, there are times like this where I'm like, gee, I kind of wish I still had my little Sherline mill and my Sherline lathe. But that's when I made that, and that's a 1/8 inch hole holding that tap. But it worked fine. And I think the important thing to know is that the chuck, I made a video of this, I posted it. The chuck becomes a guide for the back of the tap. And then all of the horsepower comes from your 2 little fingies that you can drive the tap with your fingers and just let the chuck be a guide. Robin likes that. And I used anchor lube, as shown in the picture, as a lubricant for the tapping operation. Now, does anybody know why anchor lube is appropriate for this? Anybody? Why would I use anchor lube for this? Robin says because it's water-based. That's a possibility. Evil says you could take your time as it won't drip off. That's a possibility. Stefan says it was in arm's reach. Stefan was exactly correct. I have my anchor lube right behind the mill, and it's like I just need a little something. And I like the green. Can you blame me? I like the green. So that's why I used anchor lube. # not sponsored. And it worked out fantabulously well. So a couple of minutes twiddling twiddling the knurls, as it were. And that's the best picture ever. We were done. Hole tapped. I took another center drill, I think a bigger center drill, and I used it as a chamfer tool, and I just kissed it with my fingers. I mean, barely touched it, and it was ready to ship. So, all done, teeny part, lots of considerations for how to use a 3,000-pound machine manually to do this little weird operation. Now, a lot of us with CNC machines that weigh 6,000 pounds have used 20,000ths end mills to make things. That's not what we're talking about here. This is a manual machine to do a little repair, and you just got to get creative. Stefan, you don't have to apologize. You were exactly correct. It was within arm's reach. The thing that I kind of wish I had was the aluminum. The Rapid Tap. No, what's the clear one? Very watery one. And there's one for aluminum, and I can't remember the name of it. Magic Tap. Thank you. That's it. So I have the Magic Tap, and I have Magic Tap for aluminum, and I kind of had in my head that that's the one I wanted. But in retrospect, the fact that the anchor lube was not solvent-based was just fine because we had 609 in there. So I didn't want to affect the 609 either. So Stefan says, doing a lot of dumb small stuff, I have to say, a heavy tool room machine is very nice for tiny work. It does not blow away in the wind, I will tell you that. And as long as the machine is not clapped out, even then you start tightening gibs and things, you can make it work. Unix Carbide says, I'm in the camp of people who like the smell of Magic Tap. Careful. The taste is awful, though. Stefan says, I prefer my Weiler lathe 1,000 times over a watchmaker's bench lathe. So watchmakers are interesting folks. Watchmakers do an amazingly small amount of measuring. Like, they don't care if it's 1.1 millimeter or, in their case, maybe, 0.3 millimeter or 0.4 millimeter. And they're not doing a lot of measuring. A lot of the watchmaker lathes don't have any calibration on any of the hand wheels. In fact, back when I did have my Shoreline mill and my Shoreline lathe, and I'll tell you the story about how I ended up with those, Shoreline was trying to break into the watchmakers because their little lathe and their little mill were perfect for watchmakers. But they were actually calibrated. I mean, you had hand wheels just like every other lathe. And they had to overcome some of the stuff that watchmakers were used to in order to get into that market. I think they were successful. Show parts in the after party, Robin. That would be awesome. We are very interested. So this was a lot of fun, and the part was shipped. It is up in Canada somewhere, and about to get delivered. So that was the story of the great big machine and the little teeny weeny part. And I'm glad it all came together, because I was very nervous about breaking something, and I didn't want to break it. So we got that out. So the reason I ended up with my old Shoreline lathe, which I sold eventually, Shoreline lathe and Shoreline mill, was it was my first machine tools. Those tools preceded my Bridgeport and my then Jet lathe, and the Jet lathe ended up in my makerspace through no fault of my own. That was another weird story, which I think I told previously. And the Bridgeport, this is actually my third Bridgeport. The first Bridgeport I had was lovely, but it was 1961-ish. It was like my age. And it was clapped out. I'm sorry. It just was. high retrofit. Um, so eventually I got another Bridgeport that had an AGE control on it, a track control on it. And then I sold that when I got my another mill. And then eventually I bought this rather nice 1991 Bridgeport. And it was reconditioned, lightly reconditioned. It was very nice from a very good dealer, Rice Machinery down in Rhode Island, and I was very happy. So I'll be using that one forever, and that worked out pretty good. But I saw my first lathe and mill of the Shoreline variety in the basement of my aircraft mechanic, whose name is Mickey. Hi, Mickey. And Mickey is an awesome aircraft mechanic, very nice guy, just a character and a half. And so, I went to his basement, and he was showing me his little machines. And for fun, he was making little engines on his Shoreline lathe and his Shoreline mill. And that just, I owned a Shoreline lathe and a Shoreline mill, I think, within about 4 weeks of that visit. I had it, and that was my first machines, and I made money with those machines. So that was pretty cool. So for that project, it would have been cool to have the little Shoreline. It would have been a lot more comfortable, but you can take your 3,000-pound machine and you can make little teeny weeny parts, and you just have to be careful. Illumination, magnification, comfort, and all the other tricks. So, one of the aircraft that Mickey was my mechanic for was a Cessna 172 that we owned. And I can't tell you what year it was, but I was out in Ohio, and things were going pretty nicely for me. The job was good. I was doing antenna stuff for a company. I was having a good time. The antenna foo was strong. And make a long story short, I ended up having a visit with the inventor of the helical antenna. And his name is John Krause. He passed away a few years back at the tender age of 94. John was awesome. But he invited me to come visit him because I was going to be in Ohio. So I flew out there, and I was with my friend Dan and my wife. My wife was in the back seat, and Dan, who is a pilot, was in the right seat. We had a great visit with John Krause, a story for another day. And we were on our way home, and everything was cool. Everything was smooth. Cessna 172, all trimmed up. We're IFR. That means instrument flight rules. That means we're flying in the clouds. I have my instrument rating. And we're coming along, and we're crossing New York State, and we're coming up to the New York State border. And we expected some turbulence. So it wasn't a big surprise. Dan was flying. So he was in the right seat flying. And he was doing a great job. Again, he's a pilot. He was inactive, but like I am now. And we're coming up to the New York border, and everything was going really well until it was starting to get a little bouncy, a little turbulent, and then a little more turbulent, and then a lot turbulent, at which point Dan makes the correct call, and he says, "It's your airplane." I said, "Thank you." And I took the controls. And of course, if you don't fly in a Cessna and pretty much every airplane, there's full dual controls. So the guy in the right seat could fly the plane. The guy in the left seat could fly the plane. So I said, "I got it," which is the 3 magic words in aviation that says you have control of the aircraft. And we go through some serious turbulence. I do not say those words lightly. At that point, I had already been flying gliders for, I'm not sure how many years, probably 10 years. And I was used to aircraft that were moving around a lot. That's one of the things that happens in gliders. But this is the kind of turbulence where your seatbelt was not optional, and we were getting thrown up and thrown down and spun around, and we're on an instrument flight plan. And I don't exactly remember what our clearance was. I think it was 5,000 feet or 4,000 feet. But I keyed the mic and I made a transmission to air traffic control, which I was trained to do. And it was the only time I had ever used the phrase, and I'd never used it since. And that was, request 4,000, block 5,000. Now, let me break that down for you. That means I'm assigned to, let's say, 4,000. Okay, I don't remember the exact number. 4,000 feet above mean sea level. That was my altitude. Now, when you fly on instruments and you're assigned 4,000 feet, I'm here to tell you that when things are all smooth, you keep that altitude literally within about 20 feet, usually even a little less. That means about one full needle's width. So when everything's all peaked up, you are literally just within 20 feet. I could not hold altitude within easily 300 feet. That's what was going on in this air. That was the kind of turbulence we were in. And I said, request 4,000, block 5,000. Now, what that means is I want you to clear me to be anywhere between 4,000 feet and 5,000 feet. Because I'm pretty sure I could stay in that window, but that's it. And of course, air traffic control had no reason not to grant that. They said cleared as requested. And all I had to do was keep that aircraft flying, shiny side up, rubber side down, between 4,000 feet and 5,000 feet. And I'm here to tell you that was an effort. So that went on, that period of time, I mean, it seemed like it went on forever, of course. I'm guessing 15 minutes of that experience. And on the other side of that, it smoothed out and we were back to normal. And I said to Dan, I said, you got it. Sometimes life is like that. Sometimes your circumstances are like that. And you know, you do things a certain way, you think of things a certain way, you have certain habits, and you're precise, and you expect to do things this way, and then out of your control, your environment gets thrown into major turbulence. And you have to open up your limits and say, I am going to stay alive, stay healthy, and keep going in the right direction. I know I'm going to get thrown around, but I'm going to get through it and get back to that environment where I can get back to my well dialed in, very accurate way of behaving. We are in those times. We are in those times. And I find myself looking at the environment and what's going on and saying, I did not expect this. And this is very turbulent. Probably the most turbulence that I have ever experienced. And we have to do exactly the same thing. We have a saying in aviation, the priorities are aviate, navigate, communicate, in that order. So the very first thing is aviate. Keep the airplane flying. So for me personally, I'm going to keep my family healthy. I'm going to keep my situation steady as she goes. I'm going to keep my source of income doing what I got to do. And I am going to, there's things I have to do that I don't normally do. I am sending emails on a regular basis to my representatives in our government to express my opinion and to inform. I don't ever remember doing that more than once, maybe, in my life. I'm doing it weekly now. And that's part of my dealing with the turbulence. You do what you got to do. And if I come up with another idea of something that I could do during, to manage the turbulence, that's what I'm going to do. This happens in business. This happens in health. And now it's happening in government. And I respect people that go through, health issues and have to just do what they can. I could name names and talk about stories, but I'm not going to. So the message is keep the shiny side up, keep the rubber side down. You are cleared 4,000, block 5,000. Do what you got to do and get through it. And if you need to declare an emergency, declare an emergency. My phone is sitting right here. You need help? Call me. You know who you are. That's what friends are for. All right. That's all I got for you today. You're welcome. I'm going to go think of the next thing to do here. I'm not saying I have a good idea of what I'm going to do next, but it might involve food. So next week we'll be back, I think. I don't think there's anything on the calendar that's keeping us from getting together. Bring good news to the party and we'll share it with everybody. In the meantime, if you need something flat, head on over to PFGstones.com. I could tell you that we will have 4-inch round aluminum oxide back in stock as soon as I finish them. But more importantly, we'll have the 4-inch rectangulars back in stock this weekend. And if we don't have it in stock, we'll make it for you. And you'll love it. In the meantime, get flat. Stay flat. We'll see you guys next week. Take care.